So, if you've been watching the reviews of the X-Files revamp that we've been doing here on Smashed, you'll know that in the latter part of the most recent episode, I kinda geeked out. And none of you bitches know what the fuck that is, but I do, because I'm a nerd. And that's Kolchak the motherfucking Night Stalker, which was the best series in the 70s by far, and it totally yeah. And so while I had no intention of doing this episode before then, we are now going to be looking into a little show from the 70s that directly inspired The X-Files. Darren McGavin, the star of Kolchak The Night Stalker, was actually supposed to appear in an episode of The X-Files as Carl Kolchak, but instead was not able to make it, so he showed up as this guy. And so now in the X-Files revamp thing, in the preview for the third episode, this business happened, and when I saw it, I squeezed so hard. So now get your wooden stakes and your awkward swastikas, because we are about to dive headfirst into the mythology of... Kolchak the Night Stalker is a supernatural mystery series that had two attached movies from the 70s. It stars Darren McGavin, yes, the dad from A Christmas Story, as the eponymous Carl Kolchak. And perhaps the only thing more incredible than its camp classicness is how much I love it. It is the greatest thing. Well, except for that episode. But hey, nothing's perfect. The whole Kolchak thing started out with an unpublished novel by this guy Jeff Rice, who was kind of an unknown, and it was called The Kolchak Papers, and it's kind of a noir mystery-style supernatural thing that was basically the plot of the first TV movie. ABC discovered it and took the pitch because they liked new ideas and started working with Rice to adapt the Kolchak Papers into a feature-length TV movie, and made the best decision ever in getting Richard Matheson to write the screenplay. Richard Matheson is the reason I love horror. You may not know him, but you know him. You see this? This is Matheson. And this is Matheson. And this... No, this is an abomination. I have strong feelings about Richard Matheson. So the first TV appearance of Kolchak was created in the form of the TV movie The Night Stalker. Not named for Kolchak himself, but for the monster of the week... hour, a vampire in Las Vegas who stalks and kills prostitutes. No, not you, Colin Farrell. As you can see, this idea was pretty influential. The TV movie was actually the highest grossing TV movie of its day, and so ABC saw that and they were like, yes, more money, let's do a sequel. And so they got Richard Matheson and created The Night Strangler. This time, the monster being a immortal guy in Seattle who strangles his victims, mostly exotic dancers, and uses their blood to stay alive. Yeah, it was a bit derivative, but it was still awesome. Then in 1973, Matheson wrote another script, and it was called The Night Killers, and it was about, like, androids or something, but ABC was like, nope, we're making a TV series because that's lucrative and the people love it. And that is how we got Kolchak the Night Stalker. I think the name initially kind of confused everyone. Like, oh, it's a story about some pervert. That's something I'll watch with the family. And I think that may have detracted some people. So in the 70s, all of that, like, TV code bunk was being, like, dismantled. And so you could have gore and murder and sexual innuendo on a TV show so long as it was in, like, the horror vein. Because horror equals weird. So prostitutes! Prostitutes in every episode, I tell you. And this is where we really flesh out the story of Kolchak, his world, and his loose mythology. Number one, you've got Kolchak himself. Ooh, those pants. Unlike your typical horror movie hero, Kolchak is not a shining example of masculinity, nor, as would be the standard a few years later, a dainty Cinderella archetype who survives because we must protect the virgin. Throughout a good baker's dozen of the original series episodes, Kolchak is a likable asshole, and it's done really successfully because even though he's kind of like a sleazy car salesman kind of guy, he comes off genuinely loving his job and loving some people, sometimes. In the series, he works in Chicago in something called INS, which is the Independent News Service, and he's just an investigative reporter. It's pretty cool. His deal is that he is a true believer, to use the X-Files terminology, but not overtly enough to seem absolutely nuts. So the only other really consistent characters in the series are his co-workers, in the form of his boss, Tony Vincenzo, who is the best, his ideological opposite, Ron, who's alright, and the old lady who works for the news company, Emily, and she's the sweetest thing, and she does the crossword puzzles and the advice column, and I just love her to death. There's also Captain Siska, who is a darn you kids kind of character, and he's the police chief, and he's alright. He works in some episodes better than others. And I gotta say, another one of my favorite things about the show is how realistic it is. Yeah, I know, but look at the interaction between Vincenzo and Kolchak.
Would you believe that 2 + 2 = 4?
When do we get the interview, Carl?
When do I get my coat repaired?
Are you trying to tell me that you're concerned about the way you look?
You can tell that Vincenzo totally loves him, even like a dad, and Kolchak is the rebellious teenager who's all witty and I love these two. And yes, Vincenzo is played by the psychiatrist from Psycho. So now with the normal world set up, we get into the more supernatural paranormal world, and in a word, You want robots? Oh, do we have robots? Ghosts? We have all of the ghosts. Lizard people? Hell yes. Werewolves? No. Every episode deals with a different supernatural thing, and usually Kolchak is the only one who believes it, and so he ends up having to deal with it. I must say personally that my favorite episode is the Horror in the Heights, where there's this Rakshasa, which is a Hindu demon thing, and it takes the form of people that you trust or whatever, and there's this Indian guy who knows that it exists, and so to repel it, he starts drawing swastikas on all the street corners and the alleyways in a Jewish community. I also appreciate how little the series takes itself seriously. When you watch supernatural shows today, it is so serious. If they don't fix the thing, the whole world will be destroyed. And there's really not a whole lot of that in Kolchak. If he doesn't defeat the monster of the week, ultimately it's not the end of humanity. It's just well, there's going to be another monster killing people, just doing the do. So in a way, this series has a much more job feel to it than oh, the end of the world. There's no big overarching plot here. No real conspiracy theories. Well, except here.
There was an area shaped like a saucer at the bottom. If you want to see it, you'll have to hurry. Our park commission decided overnight to do extensive reclamation work in that particular spot. They're filling it in with concrete.
And the series more or less touches on the unknown or the occult in a very daily issue kind of topic. We aren't given a reason to get super involved in Kolchak's life beyond the fact that he is just a super likable guy, which may have been one of the contributing factors as to why the show was cancelled after one season. Fuck you, ABC. After the initial couple of episodes, the ratings began to drop a little bit, and so the series was moved to the Friday 10 p.m. slot, otherwise known as the TV Graveyard. And so, in 1974, Kolchak The Night Stalker was cancelled, and it was never seen again. I said never seen again! So now, mythologically, Kolchak is a funny one. Typically, you can associate almost every single character with a mythological hero or god or something, but and it's usually pretty easy. But the thing about Kolchak is there's really only one classical mythological character that he relates to kinda well. In the mythology, Odin performs two major tasks to gain knowledge and wisdom. The first one, maybe you've heard of, is he goes to the Well of Mimir, which says the Well of Knowledge, and he sacrifices his eye to take a drink from the well, and in so doing, he gets visions of the future and wisdom about the past. And in another time, he hangs himself from the cosmic tree Yggdrasil for 9 days, and travels to the underworld to receive knowledge of the runes, which are universal magical symbols, which are also a part of our own English language. Fun fact. And so how well does Odin in particular relate to Kolchak? Most of Kolchak's episodes aren't just about him fighting the paranormal, but getting evidence to prove it to the world. But almost serendipitously, his evidence always seems to get destroyed and he finds himself suffering in some way or another, however mildly. So it's a little sacrificey. But to be honest, I don't think that Odin is the best archetypal example of what Kolchak comes from. There is a better one. The Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy Olsen is actually kind of amazing. He's not a superhero, he's not necessarily special, except for the one time he was totally a drag queen. Oh yeah, that happened. In the 40s. But he serves an important function, and more importantly, he's the representation of the American working class, or middle class, which is kind of unique even though there are other middle classes. He is you and me, and he wants the truth to be made available. Kolchak saves people, albeit not everybody, but he would willingly protect every man, woman, and child. And he's not your Van Helsings or your Blades. Comic, not the movie. He doesn't have any special training, and he's not like an academic in the supernatural. He's just a guy who's devoted to finding the truth. That's his power. It's just that he has devotion to his job. And that's what's really so awesome about this whole series, is it's not like, oh, look at the superior thing, as much as I love that in these mythology episodes. Superman is an alien with incredible power, and he's easily associated with your Apollos. Captain America is a soldier through and through. Though he fights for America, he's more of an Ares or Athena, depending on who's writing him. But when it comes to finding a truly American middle-class hero, you don't get much better than the quick-talking, witty, strangely dressed man with the bird feeder hat, protecting you and yours from the monsters both within and without. The true hero of the people, Kolchak the Night Stalker. Now, there will be lots more Kolchak stuff in the next episode of Smashed, which will be dealing with the third episode of The X-Files. Super excited. But if you would like to see more of me and more of Mythology's stuff, please subscribe. Also, I want to hear in the comments what mythology things you guys would like to hear about in particular. I know that next month we're doing American Horror Story, but let's just get ahead of the game here. And so put down there what you want to see. You can actually watch the entire Kolchak The Night Stalker series on Netflix, or a lot of it on YouTube, because it's not really that well piracy protected. Yeah. But, yes. So I love all of you guys. Please subscribe. I will see you next time on...